Hey guys and gals, I'm Rose the Raver with iHeart Raves, and today I'm here to teach you how to make the much requested surgical mask. There are many variations of masks, but to learn any of them, you'll need to start with the peyote stitch. There's a bit of what we here at iHeart Raves have deemed art math involved in learning the peyote stitch, but I'll do my best to break it down step by step. I have experimented with various types of string and through trial and error discovered that fishing line works best for a mask. I like fishing line best because it helps to give the mask structure. When I used elastic cording, the mask turned out very loose and sloppy. Since a mask does not need to stretch like a cuff does, fishing line works well and is way cheaper than elastic. You can pick up a roll of 15 feet for less than $5 at your local hardware or sporting goods store. Let's get started. For this project, you will need the following supplies: a printed pattern, pony beads in various colors to match your pattern, fishing line or your choice of string, elastic cording, scissors, and optional small cups to separate out beads by color. The first thing you need to do is select or create a pattern for your mask. I suggest checking out KandiPatterns.com and browsing all the awesome mask patterns that others have created. For my project, I have selected this skull pattern because it only has 3 colors and should be simple for you to follow along. Take your pattern and count the first column of beads. For my pattern, there are 8 beads down. I like to start making my masks from the middle, so I'm going to start with rows 4 and 5. Cut off about 2 or 3 arm lengths of fishing line from the roll and start by stringing on the first beads from row 4 and the first bead from row 5, both black in my case. If you look at the pattern, the next column of beads doesn't line up with the first column. The rows are staggered like stair steps. Next, take the bead from the next column that touches both of the beads you just strung on. We'll call this row 4.5. Now, put both ends of the fishing line together and string on the single bead. In my case, it's black, and pull this bead on with the other beads. You should have 2 beads next to each other and the other bead resting on top, like a small triangle. Next, string on the next bead from row 4 onto the top piece of the fishing line, and the next bead from row 5 onto the bottom piece of the fishing line. Then take both ends of the fishing line and string it through the next bead in row 4.5. You will have a 2-1, 2-1, 2-1 pattern as the base of your mask. Keep following this pattern until you have reached the end of the row. You should end with 2 beads next to each other, finishing off the row. Tie it off with a double knot, but don't cut the fishing line. To start the next row, and from here on out, you will only be working with 1 piece of fishing line at a time. I like to work from the middle to the top, so the next row I'll be working on is row 3.5. Take the fishing line and pull it through the last bead in row 4, then string on the first bead from row 3.5 and pull the fishing line through the next bead in row 4. The beads in this row are going to pop in between all the beads in row 4. Keep following the pattern across, stringing a bead, and pull the fishing line through the bead in the lower row. When you reach the end of the row, string on the first bead from row 3 and then string it through the first bead on row 3.5. String on the next bead from row 3 and then string it through the next bead on row 3.5. Keep following this pattern until you get to the end of the row. When you get to the end of the row, this is where it gets a bit confusing. You're going to have to weave the fishing line through a few beads in order to get it in the right place to string on the next bead. Put the last bead on and pull the fishing line through. This bead should now be lined up with the other beads in the last column. Take the fishing line and skip 1 bead and pull it down through the next bead. Then take the fishing line and pull it up through the bead you just skipped and pull it back down through the bead you just put on. I have tried to illustrate this more clearly by using bright pink string. The pink is only for illustration. I am not using this for the mask. Follow the pattern across the row, add a bead, and pull the fishing line through the bead on the lower row until you reach the end. Then just keep following this pattern. You are now ready to start on row 2.5. The left side of the beads will go on easily when you get to the end of the row, but the right side you will have to weave on the last bead of each row. When you get to the part of your mask where it starts to drop beads, just keep following the pattern, but you'll no longer have to weave the end beads on. However, you may have to weave the fishing line through the beads on the lower rows so it does not show. Once you have finished the top, repeat the same process on the bottom half of the mask. When you have completed the pattern, tie off the fishing line at the bottom and the top. Now, take a piece of fishing line and weave it through the V at the top, crisscrossing through the beads like you would a shoelace. Pull the fishing line tight. This should close the V, then tie it off. Repeat the same process on the bottom, lacing the V and tying it off. Now, all that's left is to add the ear straps. Using a piece of elastic, measure the length needed for the ear strap, but be sure to add extra to account for the space the beads will occupy. Then add on beads to match the color of the mask. I like to leave space and not fill it with beads because I find it uncomfortable when beads are behind my ear, but that's just a matter of preference. Tie the elastic off on the top bead of that column and then repeat on the other side of the mask. And there you have it, your completed surgical mask. I know masks are a bit complicated, and I hope you found this tutorial helpful and easy to follow. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe below. We want to hear from you. What do you want to see? What have you been dying to learn? I'm Rose the Raver, and we'll see you next time.